On the morning of February 1st, 1902, a Hispano sheep rancher named Teofilo Trujillo rode into Monte Vista, Colorado, to attend a trial. The trial was about 90 of his sheep that had been slaughtered the month before. He was the victim. He had come to seek justice. While he sat in that courtroom, the men who had killed his sheep rode back to his ranch and burned his house to the ground. 40 years earlier, in 1864, Teofilo had ridden north out of Taos, New Mexico, into a valley most Anglo-Americans had never seen. The San Luis Valley sat between the Sangre de Cristo and San Juan ranges, watered by snowmelt, big enough to lose an army in. The Ute had hunted there for generations. The Spanish had named it. Now it was technically part of the United States, but only technically. Teofilo became an American citizen the same year the treaty was signed. He never learned to speak English. He didn't have to. By 1870, he owned 100 milk cows, 30 cattle, 10 horses, and 10 oxen. He grew wheat, potatoes, peas, and tobacco. He built his own irrigation ditch in 1874. By 1885, he was running 600 sheep at the base of what's now Great Sand Dunes National Park. His adobe house was described in the 1890s as one of the finest homes in the entire San Luis Valley. His son, Pedro, was born on the Homestead in 1866. By the time Pedro was 13, he was already trying to claim his own land. He filed at 17, lying to the federal land office that he was 21. He built a log house, not an adobe house. He learned English. He raised cattle, not sheep. Pedro had read the wind. The Denver and Rio Grande Railroad reached the valley in 1878. With it came the Dickey brothers, Anglo cattlemen, who wanted every acre of grass for their Hereford herds. They pressured Teofilo to sell. He refused, year after year. Pedro warned his father. He said sheep on open range, run by a man who didn't speak the language of the men who wanted that range. That was a target. Teofilo wouldn't move. He had been on that land since before any Dickey brother had ever heard of Colorado. In January 1902, employees of a cattleman named George Doris rode onto Teofilo's property and slaughtered 90 of his sheep, drove the rest off into the dunes. Teofilo did what an American citizen was supposed to do. He took it to court. On February 1st, while he sat in that courtroom in Monte Vista pursuing his case, riders came back to the homestead. They killed more of his sheep. They set fire to the adobe house his family had lived in for nearly 40 years. Inside the house was $8,000 in cash. Every dollar Teofilo had saved across a lifetime of work. It burned with the rest. The intimidation worked exactly as designed. In March, Teofilo and Pedro sold all of it, both ranches, all water rights, 1,496 acres, to the Anglo cattlemen who owned the Medano Ranch next door. $30,000 for 40 years of work. Teofilo moved to the town of San Luis and raised sheep there until he died in 1915. Pedro moved north to Sargent's and ran cattle until 1934. Neither man ever rebuilt. They didn't have to. The land remembered them anyway. In 2002, archaeologists found the burned foundation of Teofilo's adobe house, exactly where he had left it. In 2012, the Trujillo homesteads became the first Hispano homesteads in the American Southwest to be named a National Historic Landmark. Teofilo's great-granddaughter, Maria Tita Cosby, helped them tell the story right. The land remembers what the books forgot.